Can you imagine having 130 videos? Like, just imagine you're right and you've written 130 pieces and somebody still asks you, what are you about? That is how much I'm failing, but failure is not the end of it all. It's just the start of something new. For a seed to grow, it must first die. Right now, I think I'm one of the biggest examples of public failure. Welcome to the Million Friends Podcast, building a place where no one walks alone. Being honest, I don't even know how to start this episode because I know the title is I began my podcast episode at 17, or I began my podcast story at 17. But this is not me going to talk about the podcast. I'm not going to be talking about, you should all begin podcast, or this is what my podcast is all about, the Million Friends Podcast. That is not at all what this show is going to be about. That's not at all what this episode is going to be about, sorry. This is just an episode about starting even when you do not know or do not have the expertise. This is about starting even when you know that failure is an option. This is just an episode not to brand or to talk or to clarify about my niche or anything like that. If I do good, if I don't expect it. But this is just to tell you that, or to just to, not even to tell you, but to just share with you how this journey has been for me, and that if there's something you should want to start or you want to start, you should probably start now. It would be maybe class, maybe you have classes, or maybe you're failing math, or maybe literature and you just don't know. This could be maybe something that will give you some encouragement, because I've begun this podcast at 17. I've posted a few episodes already. And the reason why this one is not even that fast, as much as I say I've begun my podcast at 17, is because, again, I repeat, I am not going to be talking about the podcast today. I'm not just be telling you guys about starting even when you do not know, and basically that. So, beginning this podcast hasn't been the easiest thing. I remember I began it, I got this idea and all this stuff last year around April. Today is February 16th, so it's been quite some time. And I remember I wanted to do it, and I tried going to Spotify, and it disorganized me. Spotify for Creators, formerly named Anchor, it disorganized me. And so I came back to YouTube, and so I was pivoting between, should I do YouTube or should I do my podcast? Should I do YouTube or should I do podcast? I've been changing formats, and can I say I've just been all over the place. And I think I even qualified to say that I failed publicly. Many of you guys have seen my content and you're like, Shama, what the hell is this about? What is your niche? What are you talking about? And I get it. I know I've been confused, and I am still confused to some extent. But that does not prevent me from starting something. That does not prevent me from, can I say, doing something. Most of us wait for the whole road plan and everything before we start something. I think that mentality is very wrong. Okay, I know preparation and structure exist and things like that. Those are things I totally respect, and I believe that they're going to help this channel to become better and better, because without structure, you're going to just have a mess, and you may like it, but trust me, this world will not take it very well. And I know you shouldn't care about what the world takes, but structure is very important. But I think most of us confuse structure with, can I say, perfectionist syndrome. That's what I'm going to call it. And I think that's also what I had, because many of us think of starting and you don't want to start saying that, oh, I'll fail, or maybe I don't have the right equipment, or I don't know what I'll talk about, or I don't know, maybe math is just not my thing. And we keep on claiming that I'm just not ready, or it's just not my thing. Yet in actual sense, we are struggling from perfectionist syndrome or something like that. Like, for example, many times I overthink these episodes. I can maybe make an episode, and after I make it, something happens, or maybe someone comments. For example, I don't know, I'm not attacking whoever made this comment, please don't get me wrong. I'm just pointing out how uncertain these things can be. I recorded an episode just trying out a new format, or can I say something of that sort, a few days ago, and then someone commented. Okay, they didn't comment in the YouTube, they just made a comment like after watching it, and they're like, why was he telling us about his braces? And so usually I'll just laugh that off and things like that. But then I thought to myself, and I'm like, what if I'm actually like too all over the place? What if, I don't know, I'm not supposed to be putting myself out there? And now it wasn't, the person wasn't judging me, they were just confused. Actually, this is what I'm trying to say, that the person wasn't judging me or trying to mock my content or saying that, Chama, you're yapping too much. But the fact is that I didn't have structure, and yeah, having structure is different from having perfectionist syndrome. Like, there are two different things. So many of us struggle with having perfectionist syndrome, and yeah, structure is very needed. And right now I'm also working on my structure. First of all, you don't build structure in one day. Structure takes time to happen. It doesn't come like with you just sitting down one day and you craft a whole structure. It's going to work for days and days. And that's why these board meetings of companies and stuff like that, I think that's why they have meetings on planning meetings and stuff like that. Like, I remember I joined Writers Club last week, and that first meeting was about, can I say, breaking the ice or something like that, clarifying. And the second meeting is going to be about planning, not, oh, Shama, we're going to start writing and stuff like that. No, there's a big difference. So, structure is very important, I believe that. And yeah, it is something that we shouldn't neglect, but you're not going to wait to start until you have the full structure, because that time is never going to come. And if you're probably in that position where, like, oh, I can't start this because I don't know this and this, like, you may be suffering from perfectionist syndrome. Like, you know, okay, one of the things I'm doing these days to help me a lot with this thing of starting out, because right now I'm talking about perfectionist syndrome. Let me just call this section of the podcast that. Many of us don't want to start because of that. And one of the easiest ways to overcome that I'm doing myself, and yeah, I'm not perfect at it, I'm still struggling. I read a quote from, was it James Clear, like Atomic Habits, that say that change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and glorious at the end. So I'm still trying out this method. It has not yet worked, can I say 100% or perfectly for me, but I just do it simple. Like, you get simple steps. You don't try to take a big bite. And by simple, I mean by you can be specific. You can just be specific. For example, now, in my timetable, I would put, like, maybe I'm going to revise this subject today. I'm going to revise that subject today. That would be my whole structure and whatever. But then it doesn't work for me. As many of you can tell, that when you make a timetable and you don't even use it for the whole year, and then you just did it maybe for aesthetic or something like that. But what helped me a lot was actually specifying exactly what I wanted to do. And I could just give a small testimony and say that today I was able to read for over 3 hours. Yeah, moreover, it's like a public holiday, and I'm not saying it's impossible, but you get the whole point. So I was able to revise for 3 hours. Like, okay, this is just like simply what I said. I said that today I'm going to do ICT, and in ICT I'm going to do the past papers they gave us. That was specific. I put it down. Then I said I am going to do history. I'm going to go through the focus points, write notes specifically, and put it down. And that is how I actually managed to revise. By the time I finished, I began at like around 3 or to like 50 something. And by the time I finished, it was like 6:30 p.m. It wasn't because I locked in or something like that, but I gave myself simple actionable steps. And many times we think simple actionable steps mean by, I'm going to do one subject, another subject, or I'm going to do revise this topic, revise this topic, revise this topic. That's simpler than I'm going to revise the whole curriculum, right? No. Simple sometimes means specific. So even starting out, whatever you want to start out, I suggest, it is working for me. I'm not saying that it has worked and I'm going to write a book about it, because to be honest, I'm also still figuring out this stuff. But I decided actually to try that today morning. Like, I thought of it yesterday and I was like, today I'm going to try to just be specific. To be simple, but in under simple, like as a category, specific under. So that was my goal. And I was able to maybe like wash my clothes. I was able to like do everything I actually needed to do. Not because I had made a perfect timetable, not because I had made a perfect timetable, but because I was specific. So one of the best ways to counter perfectionist syndrome is actually by being specific. I'm speaking out of one day experience, so if it doesn't work for you, please go try out. Like, that is why we do these things. This show is not for people who know it all. It's for people who are trying, people who want to constantly improve. So That is one thing you'd expect. Like when you're trying to start out, you have a lot of that perfectionist syndrome, and you've been watching all these great podcasts. Like for me, I'm giving my example. I've been watching all these great podcasts like Jay Shetty, Diary of a CEO, Joe Rogan, and I look at all those guys and I'm like, okay, I should start mine, and I want it to be like theirs. But then I watch all these other YouTube videos that are like, Shama, make it you, like, let it be about you. That is when it will last. So I am like, yeah, let it be about me. But then I realized that me is messy and me is not accurate and stuff like that. So I I have to find a way of countering that, and that could be through structure. That could be I began writing letters to myself, not because I'm lonely, but because it helps clear my mind. So all these small actionable steps to make sure I do that. That is the thing. Like I've actually mentioned two simple things there. In order to, I'm not lecturing you, but I'm just sharing what has kind of worked for me. After seeing where you want to go or having a picture, taking simple or specific steps could work for you. But then apart from also taking simple and specific steps, another thing that could really, really work for you is by customizing it to work according to how you're made. Like you know how this science states that some people are more active at night and others during the day. Other people read better in afternoon hours, all that jazz. So find what works for you. You may not work on a rigid timetable, and other people may need it, but just find what works for you. And that is the same way for maybe you, for example, for my podcast now. Being me on this podcast is really helping me. And now most of you are like, oh my god, Shama, you're now speaking out of your mind. You know, I don't know, you're now mastering the art of delivery. I know right now I've left many statements hanging and stuff like that. That is just to show you that work according to what's best for you. And a perfect example of that is I'm not saying all this out of my mind. I'm not following a script, but I put down points because I realized following scripts doesn't work for me. So if I could show you maybe guys my notebook. Yeah, the podcast is following kind of these steps and stuff like that. And I know they are not in perfect order, but again, we're human beings and my mind works in ways that I don't really know. One of the ways I can help it is by every time I'm going astray, I look at my points here and I can know where or what was supposed to come next. So that is one of the biggest things you can do for yourself. You learn how best you work. If it is, for example, mathematics, realize that doing an example and using that example works best for me. Other people work best through watching videos. Other people work best through practical examples. So learning what you want to do, learning how best you work really helps you when you're starting out something new. I don't know what many of you are starting out. There are some of you would want to start maybe a business. Others maybe you're being told, or maybe you're now a leader and okay, you have a responsibility, something new, and just don't know. That is one thing that you should probably take out of your mind. That is perfectionist syndrome. And I've given you a few maybe examples of how I took it out of my life, being specific and doing what works for you. I'm not saying you should become selfish or narcissist or anything like that. I'm just saying you can calibrate yourself to be the best version of yourself, even in the community you're in. Best version does not mean I'm now going to write books and I'm now a professional. Best version means the best way you work, the best way you know, like how a puzzle, you're trying to put a puzzle piece in a puzzle and it's a perfect one, but you have to find the best way it fits into that puzzle for you to complete it. That's the same thing with us. Sometimes you're the right person for that job, but you're just not fitting in well. And sometimes all it needs is a little calibration. So even me, that is one of the things I'm actually doing in my life right now. I'm writing more. This is my second notebook this year. I'm not bragging, but I'm just saying that writing is one of the ways I clear out my mind and help myself to be on track. So going further down this, I began my podcast at 17, or should I say a little talk about starting out something new. One thing that you should expect is failure, and sometimes it could be public, sometimes it's going to be small, other times it will be big. And failure comes in different variants. I realized failure is not only your video getting 2 views after you spending almost 2 hours working on it. Failure is not you failing a math paper after revising for the whole night. And failure is not you messing up on the first day. Those are all examples of failure. Actually, I prefer to call those setbacks, but failure comes in many different ways. One of the best ways to fail is by thinking you know it all, or that you're now on the right track, because this is a process of learning. Life is generally a process of learning, and you can never know it all or be on the right track. One of the best, I remember I read a quote that my dad sent me, was it yesterday, but one that said that a smart person learns from everything and from everyone. An average person learns from their mistakes, and a stupid person thinks they know it all. So, one of the best ways to set yourself up for failure is by thinking you've reached a final point, and I'm a very good example of that. For example, when I began writing more and stuff like that a few days ago, not even years, but it is so current. I thought that right now I'm now starting to know myself more. And my podcast, I had even rebranded my podcast and channel. If you can see my former videos, they are really bad. And right now I'm a bit on track, and I was like, yeah, I'm now right on track and stuff like that. And then some incident happened that shook my whole foundation. I thought that I'm now going to like start writing more and stuff like that, podcast, whatever. Growth was happening, and I'm like, yeah, I'm now on the right track. Forgetting that learning is a process, and you never have it all. You never, okay, I'm not saying that I thought I had it all, but I thought I had now began moving or like on purpose, and I was streamlined, aligned. Yet alignment takes time. Like the same example I gave, after you move the puzzle piece to find where to put it well, you have to push it back inside, and that can apply a bit of pressure. And if you got it wrong, you have to bring it back. So that's, I think, how my life was. So this incident, somebody texted me asking me why I had joined Writers Club. If that person is watching this video, I'm not trying to attack you. I'm just sharing how it affected me. I'm not saying it did a bad thing. It actually helped me a lot, because it helped me think and not restructure my life, but it helped me counter a part I had been maybe skipping or something like that, which has really been a big help. But that person texted me saying, Shama, why did you join Writers Club? And then I simply give them my reason. Oh, I want to write. Like, that kind of jazz. I want to be media personnel and stuff like that. So writing would help me. And then we kept on talking, exchanging questions and stuff like that. And they hinted something about the Writers Club views or opinions not exactly matching mine. And they weren't trying to attack me. And trust me, I am not trying to defend the person or anything like that. But they're actually just being genuine and serious. I'm not saying I also have the worst opinions and stuff like that. We're all just different. And so they didn't really go into detail and stuff like that. That made me think about my life, and I was like, are there some things I stand for that are just not right? Or maybe are there things that I'm doing that, and I say I'm just doing out of, I think I'm on the right path. After I discovered that writing could be one of the ways to help myself, I began streamlining myself to do with writing. I reached a point, and I wanted to be an engineer. I still want to, and I pray I will. But after discovering all this writing stuff, I was like, you know what? Even in A level, I'm going to do arts. I'm going to drop sciences and stuff like that, so that I can write more. And so that is one thing that, as a beginner, you probably will crash into multiple times. You'll rush into one direction because you've seen a bit of light that side. And I was just rushing decisions. So joining Writers Club was kind of a rush decision. I'm not saying I'm now leaving it, but at that point, before I got an internal reason to why I should stay, I discovered that I was actually just rushing, and that led to some other spiraling yesterday night. I remember sleeping at 3 after writing almost 3 essays to myself. Yeah, I wrote over 600, 800 words. That's just to show you how much spiraling had happened because of one text. And the person wasn't criticizing me, they were just pointing out something. They didn't know that it would have that much effect. They didn't know that it would actually help me rethink of my life in such a constructive way. So one of the ways you can mess up your life is by thinking you've now been put on track, and you're now going to keep on moving, and you're now set, like, keep on standby for learning. And talking more about failure is something that is supposed to happen. Like, right now, I think I'm one of the biggest examples of public failure I know. Not because a problem to society, but because I've failed publicly so many times. For example, if you go to my YouTube channel currently, many people ask me, Shama, what is your content about? It I've been posting over 130 videos, which is a real bummer because there are people who have 10 videos and their channels have way more subscribers. Not because they're more popular than me, not because they're more fortunate, but because they know what they are doing. Meanwhile, me, I'm trying to find my style out in public. So, yeah, failure is a really big thing. And can you imagine having 130 videos? Like, just imagine you're right and you've written 130 pieces and somebody still asks you, what are you about? That is how much I'm failing. But failure is not the end of it all. It's just the start of something new. For a seed to grow, it must first die. And one of the best places to not to fear failure is actually at the start, because you have nothing to lose. I remember that quote really hit me hard. It was saying, I even posted it on my Instagram. It was saying, how can I lose when I began with nothing? That is one of the biggest advantages we beginners have. It could be whether you're in medicine, whether you want to start something, whether, like, that is one of the biggest advantages you have. You have a lot of free space to learn. I'm not saying you have all the time in the world, but you have what people who have been long in the industry don't have. That easily starting thing, because you have nothing much to lose. I know you may say, oh, I'm a father. In case I start a YouTube channel and it fails, I'll be a failure in front of my children. No, that is not a fact. Because there you are beginning YouTube and not a father. There you're, even though you were very good in English and you now wanted to try math, there you're a beginner in math, not an expert in English. Like, I'm not saying you have that freedom to fail, but you don't have anything. It's not going to cost you anything to try. One of the most inspiring quotes I read of recent was something like, the only guarantee of failure you have is giving up. Like, failure is like giving up or not trying is the only guarantee that you have that you're not going to succeed. Because when you try, you can succeed or you cannot succeed. Like, I've tried very many formats on my channel, and as you can see, some of them flopped. I posted it like 6 months ago, it still has like 4 views or 5 views. And others, I posted it like a few days ago, it has like 100 something views, it has like 20 views. So I'm not also being narcissist by over talking about my channel, but I'm giving you an example that I relate with. I hope you can also put an example that you relate with. But that is exactly what I'm trying to talk about. Like, you have nothing really much to lose, and you can really try to find who you are. The thing is that you're not supposed to know it all. You just try your best to make sure you're not being held back by perfectionist syndrome. It's really not a good thing. And I know this episode has been long, but I really hope I've said something small. It's really not easy, and I know this journey is going to continue on. It's really going to be a long one, because the path I've decided to take is not really going to be the easiest. Especially, I've seen a lot of advice online saying that podcasting takes a very long time to pick up. And I'm ready for that. I'm not saying that I now know everything and I'm going to enter the field, but I want to enter like with a learner's mindset. It's not really easy. And some of you are now there saying, oh, Shama, you've now developed this David Goggins mindset. You're now strong-hearted and stuff like that. Just many days I look up to myself, not look up to myself, but look at myself. I'm like, is this really where I want to be? Is this really where it has all come to be? Like, am I really doing the right thing? And trust me, there's a lot of uncertainty, but I mean, I have nothing to lose. I know some of you are like, oh, you have your school life, whatever. If it fails, no one will give you a job now that you failed publicly and stuff like that. Some of you look at it in that way, and someone else is looking at it as someone dared to try even when they knew that their chances of succeeding were small. And the fact is that what won't kill you will make you stronger. That's maybe all I can say. I'm not saying go die, but try, people. Like, don't hold back. You never know your full potential until you try. You never know your full potential until you try. People who break limits are people who try. People who do new things are people who try. People who never try stay small. And you may be like, oh, I like where I am. I make good money and stuff like that. I can take care of my family and whatever. But I have one question for you. Is that all to life that there is? Are you really going to just live a few week, live 1 week a few hundred times and call it a life. I don't know. We're all built differently. So that being said, I would love to end this episode here. Hopefully, I didn't talk randomly and spiral and forget where exactly we were. And hopefully, you followed. Make sure you, I don't know, comment something that you liked or maybe a question that you maybe like me to answer. And thank you so much for watching. I know this video is not going to get like 5 views. If it doesn't, good. If it does, I'm not doing this for applause. Otherwise, I would have been posting shorts and, trying to make it go viral. Like, that is not the reason I'm here. And with that being said, I'd like to end this episode. And please, in case you enjoyed this content, you could maybe like and subscribe. You could also share it with someone who may find it valuable. And we'll see you guys in the next one.